Well, we have here the definition of inclusion. And as you can read, inclusion means that children with special needs attend preschool, childcare, educational, hospital playroom, family support, early intervention, and recreational program with their peers. And the belief and values that influence inclusion occurs at the levels of the family, the community, and the society. A family's belief system has a direct impact on its views about inclusion. The socio-political context in which children and families live and work also affects inclusion. This context includes how our society views high quality early childhood education and care for all children. In other words, if providing high-quality childcare for children of working parents is not a society priority, providing high-quality childcare for children with a special need will not be a priority either. The experience of inclusion varies from child to child, from family to family, and from educator to educator. Inclusive classrooms are caring communities that support the ongoing development of participants. Inclusion requires planning, teamwork, and support. Educators' values and belief define experience with inclusion, and these experiences in turn influence future values and belief. Then, what means inclusion for children with disabilities? Well, as you can observe in this slide, it means attending school and activities with one's typically developing peers, acceptance by peers and others in the community, being supported so that the child's needs are being met, being able to participate in program of choice, being respected for the diversity that is inherent in all of us and in all of our families. And in comparing earlier, an actual definition of inclusion provide for many authors. Inclusions are evident. There is greater emphasis on barriers to full participation than when a child's disability in deaf inclusion. The goal of participation in inclusive setting is more explicit, requiring early childhood educators to reflect frequently on how all children are meaningfully and fully engaging in the program. There is a greater understanding that children with disability and their families experience inclusion. That is, they know what it means to be included or excluded, and they have positive or negative feelings about the experience in early childhood setting. According to Bancroft and Underwood, at that there is a shift in thinking about individual programs as inclusive programs, to thinking about inclusion as something that is experienced by an individual child. The goal of inclusion is not to make children all the same, but to acknowledge and celebrate that children are different. An inclusive program, therefore, does not use support to make children the same or normal like typical children, but to ensure that all differently enabled children realize their potential. Inclusion is now understood as a dynamic process. Saying that a program is inclusive means that the program is considered to have achieved the quality, saying that we are always working toward being inclusive, mean that educators constantly evaluate and change practices in response to children's experience with inclusion and new ideas about inclusion. Now I'd like to discuss about historical and theoretical approach that have influenced the education and care of children with exceptionalities. The first stage is early attitude. The number of children with diverse abilities participating in community programs has increased over the past 30 years. This is in marked contrast to the way children with a special need were viewed in the past. In 1973, Caldwell described three stages the Neuroamerican Society has gone through in its treatment of children with a special need. And we have included a fourth stage to describe the current approach. The first one is forget and hide. In this stage, until the middle of the 20th century, families, communities, and society in general seem to try to deny the existence of children with disabilities. As much as possible, the children were kept out of sight. Families often were advised to institutionalize immediately an infant who was born with a disability. In 1964, through Vanier's efforts, a small home known as a Lark was opened in the village of Trosly-Breuil in France for patients who live in local institutions for the mentally retarded. Supported by volunteers from Canada and other countries, the people who live in this house actively joined in village life and were accepted by its citizens. This house or this model became the basis for a movement that developed similar centers throughout Europe and North America. The second, the second stage, screen and segregate. The purpose of the screen and segregate period was to identify individuals with disabilities and provide them with a program separate from their peers without special needs. This movement grew partly out of the belief that individuals were better served within the segregated or specialized group setting. In the 1960 and early 1970s, parents through the local advocacy associations began pressing provincial and territorial government to fund early childhood programs for their children with disabilities. Often mothers of children with disability became activists leading campaigns to close segregated institutions and secure human rights for their children. some provinces took legislative actions. For example, in 1972, the Day Nurseries Act, now the Child Care and Early Years Act, in Ontario was amended to provide a funding mechanism for service for children with developmental handicaps. Alongside the Ministry of Community and Social Service also provide funding to open programs for school children excluded from public school program due to the severity of the intellectual impairment. In the third period, identify and help, the screen and segregate period lasted for 20 years or more, but in this period began in the 1970s because of social and political activities, and especially the York University played an important role in it, because advocating for the integration of persons with special needs into all aspects of the normal social system. These movements include advocating for the integration of young children with special needs into regular early childhood settings. And in the middle of 1970, large institutions for intellectually impaired and emotionally disturbed children were downsized or closed, and residents returned to mainstream society. However, this process took time well into the turn of the century. The philosophy of normalization and integration at that time was broadened to include all children with disability, not just those defined as mentally retarded. At the end, the period include support. This stage comes after Caldwell's three-stage before mentioned. The underlying assumption of the include and support period is that people with a special needs should be included as full members of society. Achieving this involves making readily available a broad range of supports, such as education and accessible environment, to ensure the full and meaningful participation of all children. The mere act of placing children with a special need into inclusive environment is not enough. Educators must take responsibility for ensuring that effective socializing and learning occur in all the children. For example, peer interaction between children with and without disability do not necessarily occur. Children need to play together when the educator structures the environment to promote such interactions. Therefore, curriculum planning for an inclusive early childhood program must focus on activities that lead to all children in an inclusive environment working and playing together. Curriculum planning for inclusive classroom also requires educators to integrate the goals identified on the children's IEPs and ongoing activities. In addition to early childhood practice, full inclusion of all children requires integrating professional efforts administrators, educators, volunteers, healthcare and social service professionals, and members of the transdisciplinary team need to work together. And within an inclusive setting, professional growth comes with a collaborative search for ways to provide for children who have developmental difference. Part of the search has to do with looking for paths that lead to a genuine partnership with parents. In fact, everyone, children, parents, educators, and others can learn from one another in an inclusive early childhood setting. Early childhood educators, however, receive a special bonus in learning to meet the needs of children who require extra support. They become more skilled at meeting the needs of all children. By learning to build on the capabilities of children with special needs, they become better attuned to the special capability of all children.